My name's Nicola. I run the HR Circle. We're based in Hertfordshire, in Hitchin. We're about to move 3 miles down the road just to get bigger offices actually next month. And our particular client base, we have 3 service offerings, but our client base is really for small businesses or growing businesses that need HR support but don't need somebody in-house. And I thought it would be interesting today just to talk about how that evolution, how your business grows and how you add additional resources into that business. So I'm going to talk through the planning triangle. I'm going to talk about different options for engaging with extra resources, service agreements, employment. Just a note on the importance of contracts. I'm a big fan of having stuff written down, and then some tips on how you can hire well. So thinking about the planning triangle, if you like, there are 3 critical elements for me in terms of adding resources to your business. And this is true whether it's the first person that you're beginning to work with or indeed the 50th person. This relates across all of them. So thinking about your budget and your business strategy, what can you afford? How much money have you got to pay for additional resources? And what's your business model and your strategy? So when I first started in HR and I was supporting a small number of clients, I would network and I would work with people who were also HR consultants, individual HR consultants, and we might collaborate on a couple of projects. But that was before I took the step to start employing people. So you've got to think about your revenues, your long-term revenues, or if you've got cash in the bank, maybe you've taken advantage of the bounce back loans that were available last year, and you're thinking, I'm going to use this to invest in my business and hire my first person. You've got to be realistic about your finances before you start spending money. And I think as individual entrepreneurs, most of us have probably been there. We've probably got to that point where we are too stretched, or we're trying to do too many things, or wear too many hats. And you've just got to think, okay, what's the next step for me? You've got to find the right person. So that might be somebody who can do what you do and can replicate what you do and service your clients in collaboration. It might be that as the business owner, you're wearing the finance hat, you're wearing the IT hat, you're wearing the marketing hat, you're wearing the HR hat, you're trying to do everything. And actually that's not your core business. So sometimes the right person might be engaging with somebody with very different skills on a part-time basis. A lot of business owners say to me, I'm getting to the point now where I really need some administrative support. I want to keep doing the high-level stuff that I do for my clients, but actually I just need someone to help organize me and sort my diary out and all of those, perhaps some of those admin tasks. So you've got to find the right person. It's got to be the right dynamic. They've got to have the right skills. And then you've really got to have some kind of, if not a really formal contract, you have to have something really that's written down. And I will explain why later on. But primarily, I think for business owners who are looking to expand, you've probably got one of 2 scenarios. You've either got to the point, scenario 1, where you know you need more support because you are creaking at the seams or you don't have enough hours in the day. So you need more support, but you don't know where to start. Or you found someone that you want to work with, but you're not quite sure how to engage with them. And I'm going to talk through some of these options. So service agreements would come under sort of associates, freelancers, you might think of them as the associate model, which, as I say, was where I primarily started, was using other self-employed people from the same industry. So collaborating with other individual HR consultants on big projects, or where I just needed additional bandwidth, perhaps passing projects over to them and taking a cut of that, or just working on a reciprocal basis. And lots of people, I think, lots of professional services operate on an associate model, at least initially. Freelancers tends to be, I suppose, project-based or ad hoc. They're very often not in the same field of expertise as yourself. So, for instance, we have a freelance graphic designer. we might engage with a freelance marketeer, and that would be under a service agreement. So the freelancers and associates that you're dealing with are self-employed or employed by a different business, perhaps with their own business, and it's a contract for services. You are engaging them for specific services. There are some real benefits for this. It's very flexible. You can switch it off and switch it on when you need it. And therefore it's affordable. You're not making a long-term financial commitment. You're likely to be getting people who are very used to working on their own, very experienced, and they're used to being paid for results, which is also important. If you've got a fast-paced business and you need things delivered. That works up to a point, I suppose, and there's probably an argument that businesses might need a combination of employees and other companies that they engage on a service agreement basis. The potential disadvantages might be the uncertainty over availability. If you're working with a freelancer or an associate, you don't really know what other commitments they may have that might intrude on your work. And I know that I personally have been here where I've said yes to too many clients, and then I'm working from sort of 6 in the morning till 10 at night. Not for too long, but there are points where actually, in order to meet my client commitments, I've overextended myself. You have slightly less supervision and control. Typically, you would say, this is what I want doing, but you don't have any control about how they do it, when they do it. And so eventually that, sometimes that model sort of falls down because of that. It's a temporary solution. So you've got a short-term need, something which is quite specific, perhaps. The next option might be to look at hiring somebody. And again, this applies for new hires as well as so first-time employment, as well as people expanding their existing team. If you want to bring somebody onto your payroll and you want to employ them, it links back to your budgets and your business strategy. Is your business strategy to grow through building a team? Is your business strategy based on a different model? It depends what's right for you. But if you're looking at employment, I've got a couple of different types of employment contract you can use. Fixed term contracts. So perhaps rather than employing a freelancer, if you've got a lot of work and probably full-time work, but doesn't have to be, and if you've got a specific project, you might want to bring somebody into your business on a fixed term employment basis. And then from there, you can see whether they're going to be a good fit for the organization long term, but also you can put a start and a stop point on it. This is for this specific project. Permanent employment contracts, which would be so a fixed term contract, will have a start and an end date, typically linked to a project or to specific deliverables. A permanent contract is open-ended, so it has a start date, but the employment will continue until either party just really decides to terminate it. And some of the advantages of bringing people into employment are about the long-term commitment. So whereas freelancers are very happy dipping in and out, employees actually usually want a little bit of stability. It's a commitment, it's a demonstration of your commitment to your business and to your employees. It can bring new skills and ideas in. It's an investment for the future of your business. There are obviously some legal bits and some HR bits around employment, and this is typically where we begin to engage with clients when they hire their first employee or they're expanding their team. So when you're thinking about costs and budgets, whereas a freelancer you might pay slightly more on an hourly fee, for employment you've got to think about your PAYE, so you've got to have your you have to register for PAYE. So you have to run a monthly payroll. You have national insurance contributions once they've earned over a certain amount of money, also pensions contributions. So if you're looking at hiring somebody full-time, you're probably looking at somewhere in the region of about 15% on top of their salary. for national insurance contributions and pensions contributions. Employees also have certain rights. They have the right to paid holiday, for instance. That's 28 days for a full-time person, which includes your public holidays. But you've got to factor in that you're paying them for 4 weeks at least, that they will be off work when you need to pay them. So it's a big step moving from a one-person business into being an employer, but it's actually not that complicated. And although it can feel quite scary, I think if you've got the budgets and the business strategy and the model to support it, it can be genuinely a really good way to build and to drive investment and to build value in your business. So in our business, for instance, when I started 15 years ago, I was working on my own, broadly around the children who were very small at the time. I was dipping in and out, and it was a traditional model of working with a small number of clients who I was quite involved with. As that developed, as we had peaks and troughs in demand, I started working with different associates and different people who I met networking, and then building in additional support if I needed somebody to build me a website, on the IT side, or somebody to support with marketing. And then probably about 5 years ago, thought actually this is as far as I can take it on my own. I need to look at building it out and employing somebody. And so we employed our first person. And then since then, we're now a team of 6, and we're looking at taking on another part-time HR officer later on this year. So by deriving the investment through employment, it has helped my business actually take on more work and more regular work. So for me, that was the right business strategy and the right business model. But it's not right for everybody. And that's where things like the freelance and the associate model can work brilliantly. And just on that, you've probably heard about IR35 for small businesses. At the moment, there's no issue with IR35. It's coming in for larger businesses from April this year, and it's really to try and close the loophole on businesses that try and avoid the taxes that are associated with employment. For small businesses, I'd say keep an eye on it, but don't worry about it really till April next year, when it may well have an impact on some of the smaller organisations. Importance of contracts. Regardless of how you engage with any outside individual or outside business, it is really important to have contracts. So in HR, we deal with a lot of the disputes that happen, and it always goes back to the contract. It's always what was written down first, what have you agreed, and having it in writing up front when you're friends and you're all getting on nicely saves you a lot of heartache in the long run. And it doesn't have to be overly complex. So for employment, contracts are a legal obligation from day one. There's no getting around that. But even if you're engaging with a freelancer or an associate, I think it's helpful to write down your expectations. Provide a clear outline of the roles and responsibilities. That gives you and the person you're engaging with the opportunity to ask all those questions and just see what that level of understanding about the work actually is. Because it may be blindingly obvious to you, but it might not be to the other person. It's far better to have that conversation and to capture it in writing. When you're thinking about contracts, how much are you going to pay? When will you pay? So for an employment contract, that's typically you would pay monthly. For a freelance contract, it might be that you're paying hourly. What happens if somebody goes over their hourly budget? How are you going to deal with overtime? Are you going to pay when you get paid by the client? Or are you going to pay ahead of receiving the fees? All of these things are there to consider. How long is the contract going to be for? Do you want an open-ended contract? Or is there a set point that it will end? And then what happens when it ends? Do you automatically part ways? Or is there a chance to renew or to review it? Can you cancel the contract early? You've met somebody, you think it's great, and then you think, actually, maybe it's not working out how you hoped. Maybe the client situation and your revenue situation has changed. What's your financial commitment by entering into this contract? So again, it's back to the budgets and your business strategy and really thinking clearly about that. Post-termination restrictions is really just a way to protect yourself if somebody, at the end of the contract. So if somebody's working closely with one of your clients, perhaps on, in an associate model, but also in an employment contract, what's going to prevent them working directly with your clients once the contract with you finishes? So they may be hard to enforce, but setting these expectations down first of all and having a conversation about them is going to mitigate your risk that somebody comes in, meets your clients and thinks, oh, this is really nice, and walks off with them. If you want to have properly watertight ones, you have to see a lawyer and you have to get legal advice and the correct wording for that specific situation. But I would generally say it's worth just saying to people, actually, when you finish working with me, I don't expect you to be in direct contact with my clients or the clients that you've worked with over in the last 6 months. I don't expect you to try and poach my employees. And you're setting that expectation up front. So contracts are very important, and it can be as simple as a letter of engagement with a freelancer. For an employment contract, there are certain things that you have to have in it, and they have to be written in on day one. We've got free templates available as it says down there. But it's important to get it in writing and to discuss these things, as I say, at the beginning of the relationship while everyone's friendly. Most of the time, you don't need to rely on a contract, and you hope that you part ways on amicable terms. But you're just protecting yourself and your business if you think about it in advance. My final slide is just looking at hiring well. So if you haven't got the right person, it's not somebody and you think, I know exactly who I want to engage with and how I'm going to do it. You've got to think about the role that they're going to do. What are your non-negotiables? What's essential for you? Where can you compromise? You're unlikely. If you write down everything that you want, you are looking for, blue unicorns in spacesuits, something which is probably impossible to find. So think about what you actually need and what the end goal is. Think about skills, knowledge, and experience. But as important as that are individuals' behaviours, values, and attitudes, particularly if they're representing your business, particularly if they're going to be one of the first people who comes into your team. That expansion, whether that goes well or not so well, it's going to be around the fit for your organisation. In terms of sourcing and interviewing, there are great online job boards. I've hired lots of fantastic people through Indeed, which is very cheap and very cheerful, but you do get an awful lot of applications. Also network. Something like WIBN is great for that, just to say, look, I'm hiring. Does anyone know somebody who might be looking for this work? Because that's really network. You don't know who the people you're speaking to actually know and who they have in their own networks. Check references, examples of previous work. It's so frequent that people don't do that. And it's such a simple thing to do, just to kind of think, to verify what you're thinking. I've put in thinking about your candidate experience and your brand. If you put out an ad and you are inundated with loads and loads and loads of applications, which can happen, we're in a tough job market at the moment, make sure that you go back to everybody and reply and acknowledge and decline, so that they go away thinking, hey, I didn't get that job, but HR Circle, they looked after me. I mean, you can do real damage to your brand if people think that their application's gone into a black hole and they've never had any feedback from you. You've got trial periods, you've got probationary periods. So although it can feel like a scary move, use those parts to assess and to review and to have an honest conversation about how well something's going, or perhaps how well it's not going, or what needs to change in order for it to continue.